However, in trying to figure out how we move this forward, I've changed that section, and it basically limits it to those instances where they're on duty and they breach in whole or in part of their duty, the employer's duty to reasonably supervise, hire, and train those law enforcement officers. So whether it's the public entity or the private entity, that's the person whoever's contracted or hired them for that particular purpose is going to be subject to liability should the court or finder of fact decide that they are liable. In addition, we've eliminated in whole the new 801 -42.9 dealing with vulnerable victims. Still got some issues to work through on that one.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Bourne. I think we may need a motion to move the substitute, and then we'll take comments from the committee.
Move the substitute.
Second.
All those in favor use vote sign of aye.
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 All right. Okay, at this time, with the substitute having been moved, are there any questions or comments from the committee in regards to HB 5013 with the substitute?
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Cox.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, thank you last night for giving me, and I think Republicans, a heads up this bill is coming up. But I have to say, I do think this is a little unique situation. As I recall, doing appointments, there is no overlap between courts and appropriations. I don't see the substitute. So I do know we have another meeting. It's a very, very big bill for a lot of us. And we don't have the expertise of the courts members here. So I would request, since we have another meeting, that we take a bow for the day.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that HB 5013 5 for the day. All those in favor, please use both sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
I think we're going to do a recorded vote on this. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Chair, please bear with me for one moment.
So those of you who are in favor of it going by for the day will vote yes. Those who oppose will vote no.
Delegate Hurst.
I vote no.
Delegate Hurst votes no. Delegate Davis.
Aye.
Delegate Davis votes aye.
Please close the roll. The motion to go by for today fails.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Cox.
Mr. Chairman, in that case, this bill got a lot of debate, I know, in courts, and certainly in appropriations, we had some debate the other day. I think if you look at all the various law enforcement bills, and obviously some of us think they could be very detrimental to law enforcement, this is the one that probably stands out more than any other one. And when you talk to whether it be representatives of the state police or local law enforcement, this is the one they fear, because they feel like with qualified immunity, they will lose a tremendous amount of folks not only from their current ranks, but their recruitment will, I think, go into a tailspin. And I know we're going to hear the argument that you don't want those kind of people anyway. I would totally disagree. I think all of us would agree that we have no idea what it's like to be a law enforcement officer on the front line and the pressures that you're under. I would say in most cases, they make very, very good judgments. We want very well qualified officers, but we also want them, it's just whether you're a teacher, whether you play sports. The worst thing that can happen to you is you're second guessing yourself all the time. In the back of your mind is, I can always be sued. And I can tell you as a teacher, if I had a good building administrator that I knew was going to back me up, and I was really cautious about ever sending kids to the office. If I didn't have that, and teachers don't have that, I tell you what they do. They hide in their classroom, too many of them, and they basically, because of the liability issues. So I think what we're setting up here is exactly the opposite of what we would like to have. And that is law enforcement making really good split-second decisions instead of always having in the back of their mind that they can be civilly sued. So I don't think this concept's improved a lot from yesterday. I applaud the committee yesterday for, to me, making some people crossing the aisle, making the right decision. And so I would hope that we would defeat this substitute. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman. Who am I looking at? Delegate Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking to the bill.
Delegate Jones.
Thank you. And I respect the comments that Delegate Cox just put forth. And I would also just like to say that I understand, and I think we all respect and revere law enforcement in ways that I think gets distorted. I think none of us want to undermine their ability to do their job, their ability to hire, their ability to recruit and retain good people and train them. But I think that no entity should be able to sort of to go above the law. I mean, in my job as a lawyer, I'm subject to being recalled or for malpractice. I think there should be no fear, and we're not, and lawyers and law enforcement officers won't be second guessing themselves in the line of duty. If they know that the decision is right, if they feel like they are acting as a reasonable and prudent officer would be, they have nothing to worry about. And I think that, again, and I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again, if you have folks who are worried about using too much force, I'm really not sure that those are the folks that we want to have on our police forces. And I have the utmost faith in our sheriffs and our police officers and our law enforcement to train these folks to do the right thing. And what we're talking about are situations that happen so infrequently. But I challenge everybody in this committee to take a step back, to think about a situation in which your loved one, your family member, your friend, your neighbor was subject to an incident in which they were the subject of unnecessary force. And wouldn't you want them an opportunity to be heard in court? And I think all of us as public servants and people who respect the Constitution of Virginia and the Constitution of the United States want to make sure that your constitutional rights are protected. And if your constitutional rights are violated, you should have your day in court. And so that's why this bill is a good idea. It's a great step. And I encourage everybody to vote yes on this, to report it to the floor.
Delegate Sickles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to associate myself with those remarks of Delegate Jones. I couldn't say it that well myself. Something is wrong in this country. And when we see this violence every month, every few weeks, inexplicable to me how people can get shot in the back and walk away without any sanction. And so I just hope that we will pass this as one step to getting a handle on this continued violence that we're seeing in some police officers. It's not everybody, but it's enough that people are not changing their behavior. I'm just astounded when this happens every few weeks. How can this happen? So I'm just on that basis alone, I hope that we will put in place something that will help people think about what they're doing before they shoot people in the back. So I hope you'll vote yes on this bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Who do we have here?
Betsy Carr.
Delegate Carr.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I also would like to associate myself with the comments of Delegate Jones. I have one question just on the text of the bill that came in front of us. I'm not a lawyer, but in Section A, what it has, who under color of law, I'm not familiar with that term. Can somebody explain that to me?
Delegate Bourne.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And Delegate Carr, are you referring to the new language or the original language?
I'm just pulled up the language that Ann Oman sent.
Okay. Section A.
And it says any law enforcement officer as defined in 9.1-101 who, under color of law, I don't know if that's a special term or whether that happens to be a.
Yeah, it's just.
That just means the mere semblance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the committee operates.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Whoa, one second, please. I think I did see Delegate Knight raise up, and who else did I have? I thought I heard
Delegate Austin, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Austin. We're going to go Delegate Knight and then Delegate Austin.
Mr. Chairman, we have a severe Yes, sir. We have a severe law enforcement and corrections officer shortage. We've tried to financially incentivize these positions through the years to not much avail. And this bill is going to make the hiring so much worse. I can tell you from my personal perspective, if I was a young man or lady and I was considering a profession in law enforcement or corrections, and I thought that's what I would want to do, and I looked and I saw where I had the threat of being sued, or if it was one of my sons, I would advise them not to go into this profession, because even if you're innocent, you lose. We've heard many, many times of frivolous lawsuits being filed by some unscrupulous lawyers that'll sue anybody. And that's just like police officers. We have a lot of very, very good attorneys in the state of Virginia, but we have some that'll sue anybody. And even if you're innocent, because someone made an unfounded complaint, you still lose. It still ruins you financially. Thank you.
We're going to have Delegate Austin and then Delegate Brewer.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. This bill is very disturbing to me and to law enforcement. I've been contacted by numerous law enforcement officers who say that this is going to end their career. They've got many, many years of service. They're very dedicated to their profession, but this bill can be very devastating, and they're not willing to jeopardize their livelihood and their homes in the event of a civil case. We, for years, have handed down to law enforcement the mental illness issues of society, the drug-related problems of society, and law enforcement has not had the funds or the tools to address these appropriately. We're incarcerating people, putting them in jail, and then sending them to court and fining them and doing nothing to address their mental illness or their drug-related problems. And just like Delegate Knight said, I just don't think that anyone is going to want to pursue a career in law enforcement under these circumstances. And as Delegate Carr said, she's not an attorney, and neither am I. And that's why I think this bill should have gone back to courts. It should go back to courts and be properly vetted and language gotten right before we intend to approve a piece of legislation that's not been properly vetted. So, I just hope that the committee will look seriously at this legislation. We're going to lose a lot of good law enforcement people. And yes, you're right. A few bad apples can ruin the whole bunch. And I don't think we've had that many issues in the Commonwealth where there's been bad decisions made and law enforcement has acted inappropriately. So I would just ask the committee to look very seriously at this bill and let's reject this legislation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to say, speaking to the bill, there are several pieces of legislation that are going to the floor within probably the coming week that are going to address several issues I think that many people across the Commonwealth have expressed concern with. When it deals with qualified immunity, though, the key word there is qualified. And I think that, our law enforcement agencies clearly know how to handle these situations. But I agree with several that spoke before. Nobody dislikes a good cop worse or a bad cop worse than a good cop. I truly believe that 99% of the people that work in this profession serve with integrity, with honesty, and respect to all communities. And I believe that legislation that will be going to the floor will address that. However, this is not it. This borderlines on one of the most dangerous pieces of legislation that will affect people working in law enforcement for a generation. We say that we want people that are qualified. We say that we want people that are upstanding. But when you have people that we're asking to go into a line of work for barely above the poverty level to work already, and then we're talking about the opportunity to destroy their entire career, because now with social media, the reality is that we try people in the court of public opinion before we allow investigations to go forth the way things should go. However, the word qualified is the key word here, and we need to remember that. In regard to where this bill is going, and I think we can all read the tea leaves,